Discover the miraculous covenant, the divine transformation of Joseph and his pagan wife Asenath. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Joseph, the favored son of Jacob, had risen to prominence in Egypt after being unjustly sold into slavery by his own brothers. Betrayed and cast into a dark pit, his trials seemed insurmountable, yet God's providence was unfurling intricately before him. Pharaoh, the sovereign of the mighty Nile, was plagued by disturbing dreams, visions foretelling years of abundance followed by grievous famine. Only Joseph, with the Spirit of God within him, could interpret these dreams, revealing the divine insight that would save Egypt and, unbeknownst to him, his own family in the years to come. As Joseph stood before Pharaoh in garments of fine linen, a crown of authority rested upon his head. His heart, once tormented by the scars of betrayal, now swelled with the honor of a newfound purpose. Yet amidst the splendor, he met Asenath, the radiant daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, cloaked in her father's pagan beliefs. The brilliance of her beauty and the vibrant hues of her world stood in sharp contrast to Joseph's humble heritage, yet in the tapestry of God's plan, their destinies were entwined. In this dynamic cultural milieu where the language of the Nile danced with enchantment, Joseph's life began to flourish. His new role demanded wisdom, order, and even grace, qualities he had learned through suffering. Asenath, however, found herself torn. Each day, her father's traditions clashed with the truth she witnessed in Joseph's unwavering faith. Famine surged upon the land, and within the chambers of their home, the weight of unspoken fears began to mount. They named their sons, Manasseh, for God had made Joseph forget his hardships, and Ephraim, for he had made him fruitful in a foreign land, even in the land of his affliction. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. As the famine's grip tightened, the spiritual struggle within Asenath deepened. One fateful night, as darkness cloaked the land, she was visited by the living God, whose voice resonated within her, shaking the very foundation of her beliefs. Would she abandon her father's idols and embrace the God who transformed her husband? As she wrestled with this divine encounter, the glow of Joseph's spirit persisted like a beacon in the shadows. Hope, ever present, urged her toward a new revelation. Joseph, unaware of Asenath's turmoil, remained vigilant in his leadership, trusting in God's purpose. He understood that forgiveness was as crucial as the grain stored for the coming years of famine. As the days of trial stretched before them, he hoped for a bridge to unity and understanding between them, longing for both to embrace their faith in the God who had so powerfully orchestrated their lives. As darkness fell on Egypt, the Son of God's grace awaited to usher in a new dawn. The paths of Joseph and Asenath diverged from their pasts, drawing closer to the covenant of hope that promised redemption not just for them, but for generations yet unborn. Would they rise to fulfill the divine calling upon their lives, or remain entrenched in the traditions that bound them? In this poignant balance of faith, identity, and divine promise, another chapter began to unfold in God's magnificent narrative. What was God's ultimate plan for them, and how would their legacy echo through the ages? In the days that followed, as the shadows of the famine deepened, Asenath's heart wrestled eternally with her thoughts. By day, she moved through the bustling halls of the palace, yet her soul was shackled by confusion and fear. Each time she glimpsed Joseph overseeing the storing of grain, she remembered the voice that called her in the dark of night. How could she, a daughter of the Nile, turn away from the gods of her ancestors? Yet the memory of Joseph's unwavering faith was an ever-persistent whisper in her ear, challenging her to listen to the truth that danced just beyond her grasp. One evening, as twilight draped its cloak over Egypt, Joseph saw Asenath standing by the riverbank. The light of the setting sun flickered upon her, illuminating a face marked by struggle. He approached her, drawn by an undeniable pull, and asked softly, "What troubles you, my beloved?" Asenath turned, her eyes glistening with unspilled tears. "Joseph, I am torn between the gods of my people and the God whom you serve. I have seen how he moves in your life, but I am ensnared by the fear of breaking the ties of my lineage." Joseph took her hands and gazed into her eyes. "The path of the Lord is woven with both trials and triumphs, yet it leads to life everlasting. I, too, bore the scars of betrayal and separation, only to discover that my greatest blessing lies in my surrender to his will." She shivered at his words, as if a light had broken through the weight of her doubt. "But what if I abandon my father's ways? What if my people reject me?" Joseph, filled with the Spirit of God, replied, "In forsaking what is false, ye shall find what is true." The Lord can transform your identity beyond the limits of heritage, and in doing so, he invites you into a legacy of salvation and promise. Awash with emotion, Asenath remembered the dreams of Pharaoh and the provision they brought to Egypt, providing not only for this land but for her family that lingered far away. Could it be, Joseph? Can the God who governs the stars also guide me? Indeed, he can, Joseph assured her, for his love is sovereign, reaching beyond the borders of nations and faiths. Thus, that night, amidst the stillness of the Egyptian air, Asenath bowed before the God of her husband, surrendering her heart and her old life. In a prayer whispered from the depths of her soul, she cried, "God of Joseph, I cast aside my father's gods. Lead me in truth and light, for I stand in need of your grace." Miraculously, the heavens seemed to part in that moment, stars twinkled brighter, reflecting the divine favor now resting upon her. In great anticipation, Asenath returned to Joseph. "I am ready, my husband. I choose your God, I choose him as my own." Time continued, and as seeds of faith grew within Asenath, they prepared to face the coming famine as a united family, a mother and a father bound not just by love, but by a new covenant with the Almighty. But unknown to them, their decision carried the weight of destiny. For the signs of great change were looming on the horizon as God's plans unfolded, and a journey was set that would extend beyond the shores of Egypt, reaching not only their family but the nations yet to be revealed. What unfathomable purpose awaited as the Lord prepared to weave the threads of his grand design? The answers lay not just in survival, but in the promised legacy of faith that would echo through generations, through the child of promise yet to come. As the days of plenty dwindled and the famine approached, a heavy cloud loomed over Egypt. Joseph, now well established as Pharaoh's trusted steward, continued to gather grain and prepare the land for the impending crisis. His heart was steadfast, for he understood that it was the providential hand of God that brought forth both abundance and scarcity, yet, in the palace walls, all was not still. Asenath, now resolute in her commitment to the God of Israel, navigated her new life with a profound sense of purpose. Each morning, she arose before the sun, her spirit attuned to the voice of the Almighty. She wove prayers into her daily labor, seeking to align her heart with the divine path laid before her. One day, as she gathered grains alongside Joseph, a whisper of unrest filled the air. The merchant spoke in hushed tones about the coming devastation, and a palpable tension settled upon the land. The Egyptian people, weary and fearful, looked to Joseph for hope and guidance. Yet within their hearts lingered the remnants of doubt. "Joseph," Asenath said, her hands still as she sensed the weight of sorrow around them. "The whispers of the people echo their despair. How shall we lead them through this trial?" Joseph, with the wisdom bestowed upon him from above, responded, "Fear not, for the God we serve does not abandon his own. The coming famine is not merely a trial, but a divine opportunity to reveal his glory. He uses the destitute to draw the hearts of many towards him." In the stillness that followed, Asenath reflected on her own transformation. She felt the warmth of faith blossom within her, a faith that began to ripple outward. "What if we could bring hope to the hearts of our people through acts of kindness and charity?" she proposed, her eyes shining with fervor. Joseph nodded thoughtfully. "Indeed, my beloved. Let us gather the people. We shall share the grain with those in need, and in doing so, we will show them the love of God. For even in famine, his provision can overflow." They called upon the leaders of Egypt, and news spread like fire across the land. As the marketplace filled with anxious faces, Joseph stood at the forefront, his voice clear and steady. Gather, O people of Egypt. The Lord has revealed to me a plan to sustain us in this time of want. Asenath stood beside him, her heart swelling with love for her people. She addressed the crowd, "Let us cast away the fear that binds us and embrace the grace that awaits. Together, we shall share what we possess, and the Lord will multiply our efforts." A murmur of hope began to stir among the crowd. The faith of Joseph and Asenath ignited flickers of light in the hearts of many, drawing them closer to the God who whispers in their pain and fears. As they began to distribute grain, to their amazement, the storehouses did not diminish as they expected. Every hand that was willing to give was met with abundance, each sack of grain becoming a blessing over and above their initial offerings, and so, they embarked on a journey of compassion, revealing to the people the merciful nature of the God who reigns over Israel. Word of their generosity spread beyond the borders of Egypt, causing nations to take notice, but even as they witnessed the hand of God at work, a revelation stirred in the depths of Joseph's spirit, one that would challenge their very understanding of destiny. For in the shadows, unseen forces were converging, preparing for a reckoning that would alter the course of history itself. What role would Asenath and Joseph play in this unfolding drama? Little did they know, the tapestry of God's plan was being intricately woven, each thread leading to a promise yet to be fulfilled, one that would bind their family to the legacy of faith for generations to come. In the days that followed, the famine gripped the land with an iron fist. The skies remained clouded, withholding the rain that nourished the earth. The cries of despair echoed louder as the people of Egypt grew weaker. But in the palace of Pharaoh, the atmosphere was marked by a tenacity fostered by faith and an unwavering hope. Joseph stood mighty before the throne, the weight of the world upon his shoulders but anchored by the steadfast assurance of God's promises. He called upon his leaders once more, "Let us not falter in this hour of darkness. For our God, who has given us abundance, is also the God who brings forth sustenance from unlikely places." Asenath, now devoted as Israel's daughter, mirrored Joseph's resolve. Her heart swelled with compassion each time she witnessed the people receiving grain, their faces transforming from despair to gratitude. "Joseph, look at them. Their hearts begin to soften. They see our provision and realize the hand of the Lord is with us," she exclaimed, her voice laced with the spirit of joy. Then one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky with hues of crimson, Joseph found himself deep in thought. He wandered the palace gardens, pondering the dreams that had once haunted his youth in Canaan. He recalled the sheaves of wheat bowing to his sheaf and the stars that had nestled themselves to worship him. A flood of emotion washed over him, and he fell before the Almighty in prayer. "O Lord, I am but a servant to your will. You have placed me here, not for my own glory, but to manifest your dream through me. Reveal to me your covenant and the path you would have us tread." In the stillness that followed, a vision enveloped him, shadows of a great family emerging from the depths of despair, a lineage tied together in purpose and promise. God spoke to him, not with thunder, but with a gentle whisper of truth. "Joseph, your path is intertwined with that of many. The famine shall draw forth your kin, and through you, a nation shall rise." As daylight broke, so too did the burden of revelation. Joseph gathered the townsfolk once more, summoning them to share not only grain but to testimony. "My beloved people, why do you stand in darkness? Behold, the Lord has sent us forth as vessels of his compassion. He beckons us to unite, not just in our labor but in our hearts, for together we are the instruments of his covenant." The fervor in his voice ignited an attendance. Many shared their personal tribulations, forming bonds that transcended prior enmities. They sought out the God who had drawn them forth from the shadows, yearning for the light that Joseph and Asenath so fervently displayed. Meanwhile, news of Egypt's overflowing granaries and Joseph's wisdom reached distant lands, a call summoned by God's orchestration. From Canaan, the sons of Jacob, weary from their own hunger, began their journey towards Egypt, unknowingly heading toward the man whom God had raised to save not only a nation but the household of Israel. Asenath, now more than just a wife to Joseph, embraced her role as a bridge to the legacy that would soon unfold. She felt the gentle stirrings in her spirit, a profound sense that the covenant made with Abraham was about to emerge anew. But dark clouds loomed in the corners of their story. Secret motives lingered among the hearts of those waiting beyond the palace gates. Whispers of envy were already brewing amongst the powerful, yet in all these things, the sovereign hand of God was moving, and his purpose could not be thwarted. As the dawn awaited, God's intentions unfurled majestically, leading them toward the heart of his awaited promise. What surprise awaited the sons of Jacob when they finally encountered the brother they presumed lost? How would the legacy of faith intertwine them all? A divine mystery loomed on the horizon, for the tapestry of God's grand design was delicately falling into place. In the days that followed, the sun's rays pierced through the lingering gloom over Egypt, yet the land remained parched. The cries of suffering blended with the aroma of grain being distributed, an unrelenting contrast of life amidst death. Joseph, burdened but unwavering, strategized the next steps for not only the nation but also the remnant of his father's house yet to come. Asenath, whose heart brimmed with fervor for the vision God unveiled to her husband, began to reach out to the women of the palace. "Let us strengthen them," she urged. "For hope will rise anew in their hearts if we tend to their needs and uplift their spirits." And so she organized gatherings, where she shared stories of her own transformation through Joseph's love, drawing parallels to the grace of the Almighty who transforms the barren into fruitful ground. One evening, word reached the palace that Jacob and his sons were drawing near. Joseph, filled with a mixture of trepidation and excitement, climbed the stairs to the ramparts of the palace and gazed toward the horizon. Shadows grew long as the entourage ambled forward. The weary faces of his brothers once known to him were now foreign and lined with the burden of their journey. "O God," he prayed in quiet desperation, "will they recognize the brother they sold into slavery? Have I been shaped from dust to glory only to leave my past behind?" His heart swelled with a mix of anticipation and legacy. Days turned into nights until at last, they arrived at the gates adorned with the crests of Pharaoh. The moment was at hand. Joseph summoned his officials, his voice steady as he commanded, "Bring forth the men from Canaan. Let them be brought to my house." When his brothers entered, a wave of tension gripped the air. Joseph, adorned in Egyptian finery, held their gaze for the briefest moment, then hid his countenance in the shadows. The words of their past lingered heavily in the space between them. "Surely, we have come to our end," one brother whispered, terrified. "For we are guilty of the blood of our brother." But it was not the vengeance of a wronged sibling that Joseph sought. Instead, with wisdom infused by the Spirit, he spoke, his voice emerging calm yet firm, "You have found favor in the sight of Pharaoh's servant. Do not fear. You have come for grain that you too may live." Confusion and relief danced upon their features, and they glanced at each other, unsure of the man's true intentions. Shifting the tense atmosphere, Joseph feigned sternness in order to observe their hearts. "Is your father still alive? Or did your guilt consume you entirely?" His piercing question hung in the air, and with it, the shadow of the truth began to flicker. Tremors of shame coursed through the brothers. One dared to reply, "We have a father, aged and sorrowful, and a younger brother, whom we left behind." With this confession, Joseph's heart softened, and he withdrew to weep, pouring out tears of longing and agony for kinship lost to years of enmity. The truth of God was at work within him. He knew then that these were not mere men before him, they were the fragments of his past woven into the fabric of his future. After a time, he returned, concealing his emotion. "Bring forth your youngest brother to me, for only then shall we know the veracity of your words," he instructed, knowing well the prophetic threads entwined within the journey of their lives. The tension escalated, as uncertainty and divine purpose clashed within the hearts of men. Would they treat this youngest with disdain, as they did their brother long ago? Yet, beneath the weight of accusation and the past's haunting shadows, God's merciful design began to realign. What awaited Joseph in revealing his identity? Would forgiveness and restoration truly bridge the years of separation and pain? A greater plan lay ahead, the threads of destiny weaving ever closer. Dare they embrace their God-given chance to partake in it? For the true journey of deliverance was yet to unfold, and the wonder of God's sovereign will awaited its unfolding with bated breath. As the sun began its descent, casting golden hues over the land of Egypt, Joseph found himself torn between the past and the promise of reconciliation. He pondered deeply, for each heartbeat echoed the memories of betrayal, yet the hope of restoration thrummed ever stronger through his veins. The brothers gathered in anxious clusters, their eyes darting nervously about the opulent hall, the air thick with uncertainty. "What if he wishes for our lives?" one brother whispered, fear lingering in their hearts like a thick fog. Yet another, ever prudent, urged calm, "He is a man of power and decision, perhaps he remembers not the bond of blood, but the will of Pharaoh." Joseph turned from the chamber, seeking solitude within the hidden folds of the palace gardens, awash in vibrant blossoms. There amidst the blooms, he prayed earnestly. "O Lord, my God, grant me wisdom as I stand upon the precipice of fate. Shall I reveal my true identity, or shall I veil my heart in shadow still?" The answer came not from thunder but in a whisper of wind through the branches, a reminder of the promise God had spoken over him, "I will make you a father to nations." And with that, peace washed over him like a dawn after a long night, yet the time had not come for revelation. Instead, Joseph resolved to soften their hearts further. He ordered his servants, "Prepare a feast. Let food and drink abound, and let it be done with appearances of grace." The leaders of Egypt swiftly complied, for they were aware of the good standing Joseph held in Pharaoh's eyes. As the evening illuminated the hall and the aroma of richly prepared foods wafted through the air, Joseph stood before his brothers once more. Their faces betrayed a blend of dread and confusion as he addressed them. "You shall eat at my table this night. Let this be a balm for the souls that have known strife." With trembling hands, they accepted his invitation, seating themselves around the large table adorned with the finest linen, gilded plates filled with fruits and meats. As they feasted, Joseph discreetly observed their reactions, a mixture of gratitude and unease painted their faces. "Tell me," Joseph said, adopting the guise of a ruler, "what is your father's name?" "This man who mourns, perhaps still grieving for the son he lost." Tremors ran through their souls as they spoke of Jacob, each name uttered tethering them further to the past they had tried to escape. Tears welled in Joseph's eyes yet remained unshed. He feigned control, struggling to maintain the guise of the powerful Egyptian leader before them. But as conversation flowed, their fear began to dissipate, replaced with a reluctant kinship that started to bloom like the flowers in the palace garden. The brothers recounted the tales of their journeys, the poignant moments, the trials endured, the promises made to their father, and the burden of the brother they had lost. And the shared vulnerability of their words, healing began to weave among them, unbeknownst to the brothers who thought only of the present. Joseph understood that the journey of reconciliation would not be immediate, nor would it be without pain. But somewhere in the depths of their hearts, a flicker of hope ignited. Later, beneath the canopy of stars, he met with Asenath, who had prepared a place for them in her heart. "Joseph," she said gently, "what weighs upon you? You carry both a kingdom and a heavy burden." "It is not power I seek, my beloved," he replied, "but the restoration of my family. God's hand has been upon us, and the threads of destiny weave closely. Yet I fear to reveal myself in these fraught moments." With wisdom glowing in her eyes, Asenath responded, "But perhaps this is not simply about revelation. It is about transformation. Let their hearts be opened, as yours was." The dawn of resolution crested on the horizon, shimmering with the promise of divine intervention. Joseph's heart swelled with anticipation. What awaited in this intertwining dance of past and present? Would the brothers recognize the hand of the Almighty in their midst? For God's sovereign plan, a miracle of redemption and reconciliation, was on the cusp of unfolding, waiting to draw them into the embrace of covenant promise anew, leading to an unexpected climax that would change the course of nations forever. With the dawn breaking over the land, the world seemed to awaken with new purpose. Joseph rose early, the sun's light spilling across the gardens, illuminating the path that had been laid before him. He knew the gathering at his table was not simply a meal, it was an orchestration by the Almighty, a means to bring forth the truth hidden in the deepest recesses of his heart. As he entered the great hall, he found his brothers already congregated, their murmurs laced with uncertainty. They were ensnared in the weight of their past, yet around them, the fragrance of hope hung thick in the air. Joseph's heart quickened, for the moment to unveil his identity drew near. "Brothers," he called out, his voice steady, "Let us share a cup before we speak of burdens and fears." He poured wine into goblets, the deep red liquid swirling like the emotions that tempest-tossed his spirit. "For this is a day of truth. Each of us bears the scars of our choices, even in shadow, there lies the potential for light." The brothers exchanged glances, the unease returning to them like a distant tide. Yet they lifted their cups, knowing the tension of the hour was but the beginning of a greater awakening. Asenath, observing from the sidelines, felt a stirring within her. She recognized the divine conflict echoing throughout the chamber, and she too lifted her prayer silently to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, asking for clarity, for wisdom to speak when the moment would arise. "Tell me, what were your thoughts, as you grew up in the land of promise?" Joseph continued, his gaze penetrating through the facade of power he maintained. "What of the brother who bore the weight of betrayal?" Their words stumbled forth, each reminiscent of pain intertwined with regret. They spoke of their father's grief, the fear that had driven them to act unwisely. "We were foolish," Judah confessed, his voice raw. "We sought to rid ourselves of the burden, not knowing how dearly the weight would return to us." Joseph could see their souls wrestling with the truth, as he wrestled within. "But you were chosen to bear witness to the unfolding of a covenant," he said, his voice rising with the ardor of conviction. "I know not how to face your words," Reuben replied. "We are unworthy of your grace. We cast you aside." "Ah, but it is not my grace you must seek," Joseph offered, his breath catching as he anticipated the revelation. "It is the grace of the Lord. For I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt." Silence enveloped the chamber, heavy as lead, as the weight of Joseph's words settled upon them like a thick fog. Faces blanched in a whirlwind of shock and despair echoed in their eyes, too late for redemption, too late for forgiveness. They stood petrified as if the very ground would swallow them whole. "No!" cried Benjamin, the youngest, as tears streamed down his cheeks. "Not you, my brother, surely not you." With great compassion, Joseph stepped forward, wrapping his arms around Benjamin, who trembled in anguish. "God has been with me," he declared, "and through this suffering, I have learned the nature of mercy. It is not retribution I seek, but reconciliation." As the brothers embraced him, a wave of emotion washed through the gathered company. The realization of transformation had begun, God's plan of redemption unfolding before their very eyes. Each sob became a thread, stitching together a family once shattered. In that tender moment, a new certainty arose in Joseph's heart. The narrative had shifted. No longer was he merely a ruler of grain, but the orchestrator of a greater mission. As the brothers stood redeemed in the warmth of forgiveness, Joseph knew this was but the prelude to something even grander. Oh, what purpose awaited! Through the trembling veils of their pasts, God was crafting a legacy of faith that would resonate through generations. But even greater was yet to come, for soon they would discover that from this humble reunion, a nation would be born, and the promises of God would echo eternally across the sands of time. What would this newfound relationship mean for the future? A journey woven through trials and testament, where hearts would learn the true nature of love. Joseph felt a holy urgency stir within him. Something wondrous was about to transcend beyond mere human understanding, drawing them into the sacred tapestry of God's divine will. Would they walk this path of transformation together? When Joseph spoke those words, the air trembled with the weight of revelation. His brothers, still engulfed in their astonishment, wrestled with emotions that surged forth like a mighty river breaking through a dam. Their hearts, once hardened by guilt, now began to soften as the warmth of forgiveness enveloped them. "Joseph," Judah whispered vehemently, stepping closer. "How can we hope to be accepted again? Our sins haunt us still. We are but men of shame," Simeon added, his voice choked with regret. "What can be our fate in the sight of the God you serve?" But Joseph, with eyes sparkling with divine purpose, raised his hand, silencing their fears. "Fear not, for the Lord has turned what was meant for evil into good. As it is written in the book of Genesis, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive, as they are today." Genesis 50 verse 20, he stepped back to absorb the weight of their dread and despair, and in that sacred moment, the fragile threads of a broken family began to weave anew. Hold tightly to this truth: our lives intersect not by mere chance, but by His sovereign design. Whatever transpires is laid before the Creator's gaze. The brothers looked into Joseph's eyes, and there they saw not anger but a sea of mercy flowing from a heart molded by the trials of existence. He further explained, God has brought me to this point to preserve a remnant for His people. It was not merely a journey for me, but a pathway by which many lives may be saved. Tears fell like rain, as relief washed over his brothers. They shared in the agony of Joseph's suffering, yet they found solace in God's grand design and intricate plan laid out long before the foundations of the earth were established. Meanwhile, Asenath, stirred by the unfolding scene, sensed the sacredness of their reunion. The depth of Joseph's forgiveness not only spoke of family bonds but echoed the mercy of the Almighty extending into all nations. She, not born of heritage but of a land steeped in idolatry, felt the gravity of her husband's words, whispering that perhaps she, too, could partake in his divine grace. Joseph, she interjected gently, what will become of us, of your father, and this family that bears such weighty history? Ah, my beloved, Joseph replied, his gaze softening as it shifted to her. We shall send word to our father, Jacob, and invite him to dwell with us in Egypt, where he will be sustained by the abundance. In this way, we shall flourish anew. Each brother nodded in affirmation, connected by the revelation that God's presence was surely woven throughout their narrative. Let us hasten to deliver this good news, Benjamin said, the joy brightening his weary countenance. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows of hope upon the earth, the brothers prepared to leave. Their hearts, though still marred by past mistakes, pulsed with the beat of future promise. And it was in this moment, Joseph felt the spirits nudging within him. A deeper revelation awaited. In truth, they were not simply gathering for a family reunion, they were at the edge of a covenant manifested. As God would revive Israel through their lineage, a destiny awaited his family far beyond what they could fathom. But ahead, like a treasure hidden beneath the sands of time, lay trials yet unseen, a famine approaching, deeper than they could comprehend. This would forge within them faith, resilience, and unity, a transformation that the Lord orchestrated even in the silence of suffering. What awaited them in the land of Egypt? What trials would shape them into the people of the promise? For beyond the veil of their current reality, a divine purpose loomed, a mighty nation born from heartbreak and healing, the echoes of which would resonate through the annals of eternity. The path was laid, but the journey was just beginning. Would they trust in the Lord's unwavering plan? The answer would soon unveil itself, revealing the miraculous purpose that God had intricately woven through the hearts of his people. As they embarked on their journey back to Canaan, the brothers' hearts overflowed with renewed hope, yet shadows of uncertainty lingered. Each step carried them closer to their father, Jacob, but also to the memories that haunted them like phantoms of the past. Their minds flashed with images of the coat of many colors, torn and stained, lying in their father's hands, and their culpability echoed through their thoughts. Brothers, Reuben spoke, his voice steady, as we go forth, let us remember the grace bestowed upon us through Joseph. We must approach our father with humility, bearing the weight of our transgressions yet trusting in the mercy extended to us by our brother. They nodded, united in purpose, yet the air remained thick with unspoken fears. As they traversed the rugged terrain, the natural world seemed to echo their tumultuous emotions. Distant thunder murmured portentously, while the winds howled like a lament, challenging their resolve. Meanwhile, Joseph, upon returning to his palace, prepared for the arrival of his family with solemn anticipation. He gathered provisions and sent his messengers to instruct the finest grain from the storehouses, saying, prepare a feast, for soon my family shall gather around this table, a table laden with the abundance which the Lord has provided. Asenath, observing her husband's fervor, felt the weight of her own spiritual transformation. The echoes of idolatry from her past conflicted with the tender mercy she witnessed unfolding in her new family. Joseph, is it right that I embrace these traditions of your kin? My heart is drawn to their God, yet I fear the ghosts of my former life. You are my beloved, Joseph reassured, taking her hands in his. Your faith is not bound by ancestry but is a reflection of the heart. The God of my father is now your God. Trust in his wisdom and grace, for he sees your spirit and calls you to him. In the stillness of night, as stars filled the sky, Joseph prayed for his family, seeking divine favor for their journey. O Lord, let your hand guide them, and let not their hearts falter as they face the truth of our past. A new beginning awaits, but only if we step forth rooted in faith. Days passed, and at last, the brothers reached the land where their father dwelt. There, under the shade of an ancient oak, Jacob heard the distant calls of his sons. His heart leapt within him, filled with an unquenchable longing. My sons! He cried, rushing forward with arms wide open to embrace them. Father, they said in unison, voices laden with emotion as tears streamed down their faces, we have come to bring you good news, and we must confess all that has weighed upon our hearts. As Jacob cradled them in his embrace, the truth poured forth like the water of a long-dried creek. The brothers shared of Joseph's rise to power, of his extraordinary forgiveness, and the invitation to return to Egypt with provisions to sustain their lives during the impending famine. What you speak, Jacob replied, his voice trembling, is too wondrous for me to comprehend. I thought my son was lost forever, but now I see the hand of God has worked in ways beyond my understanding. He paused, the weight of the news mingling with hope, and his heart stirred. Before we journey to this land, let me offer thanks to the Most High for preserving my family. For I remember the promise made to our ancestor Abraham to make his descendants a great nation. And thus, as they prepared to set forth to Joseph once more, the heavenly abode seemed to whisper through the night, a great nation shall arise from you, built on trust and reconciliation. As they loaded their carts full of grain, little did they know that their journey held deeper significance beyond the famine and their reunion. The trials that awaited in Egypt were but the beginning of God's unfolding plan, leading them through the very crucible of faith where they would be shaped into the people of the promise. What awaited them in the land of Egypt? What transformations lay ahead that would define their lineage forever? The answer lingered in the air, a divine echo of God's unwavering plan, set in motion long before the dawn of time. As the sun rose over Egypt, illuminating the bustling land, its rays touched upon the palace where Joseph and Asenath awaited the return of Jacob and his sons. The air was filled with expectation, a divine stirring that spoke of restoration and hope. Joseph, now filled with a sense of purpose, gathered the leaders of Egypt, declaring, "Prepare a great feast. For today we celebrate not merely a reunion but the manifestation of God's promises being fulfilled." Asenath, standing at his side, felt a swell of joy burst in her heart at the prospect of family and fulfillment. She envisioned the gathering of all who had once known division, now called forth to witness the miracle of God's reconciliation. "Let us adorn the tables with the finest linens and the richest foods," she said, her spirit dancing with delight. "For this is a day to honor not just our family but the divine goodness that has brought us back together." As they prepared for their guests, whispers of joy spread across the land. The news of Joseph's transformation and Asenath's newfound faith in the God of Israel reached many ears, igniting hearts thirsty for hope. Joseph, reflecting on his journey, understood the weight of history that rested upon their gathering. Each plate served would carry not only sustenance but the testimony of lives changed forever. When the day finally arrived, as the sun dipped low on the horizon and a blanket of stars adorned the sky, Jacob approached the gates of the palace, weary but filled with trepidation. The sight of his sons was enough to unravel years of heartache. "My sons!" he cried, tears shimmering in his eyes as he embraced them yet again, each hug a balm for wounds long unhealed. As Jacob entered the grand hall, the sight of Joseph standing with Asenath, surrounded by an abundance of food, overwhelmed him. Joseph approached his father, compassion radiating from his very being. "Father, I have been waiting for this moment. Let us rejoice, for we are together once more, and the Lord has made a way for our family." "And who is this?" Jacob asked, gazing deeply into Asenath's eyes, searching for answers to his unspoken questions. Joseph replied, his voice steady and filled with grace, "She is Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar. She has chosen to follow the God of my forefathers, and together, we stand as a testament to his faithfulness." At that proclamation, a divine silence fell over the gathering as Jacob furrowed his brow. "Surely, the Lord has brought you a wife who is filled with wisdom. Perhaps, my heart is full knowing you are united in faith." As they took their seats, the food was shared and stories of faith intertwined with laughter. Old wounds found healing in the warmth of unity, long-forgotten laughter rang through the chambers, and hope blossomed in the hearts of all present. Each shared testimony was a thread weaving them closer together, forming a tapestry of God's grace. Yet in the midst of joy, Joseph's heart was still heavy with the burden of their family's heritage. The sins of the past hovered nearby, and he knew a moment of truth was yet to unfold. He rose, calling for attention. "Brothers," he said, his voice steady, "we have journeyed through pain and trials. By God's grace, I stand here, transformed not merely as your brother whom you knew but as one who has tasted the depth of mercy. The Lord has turned our evil into good for the saving of many lives. Yet, it is essential that we acknowledge our past if we are to build a future together." Silence followed as the brothers exchanged glances, the weight of his words sinking in. Judah, stepping forward, spoke with conviction, "We acknowledge our transgressions, Joseph. In our actions we thought only of ourselves, yet God has turned our wrongs into his purpose." Tears flowed willingly as Joseph beckoned them closer. "Let this be a new covenant between us, a bond sealed by the love of our God. For from this day forth, we shall be a family unified in faith, our legacy not dictated by betrayal but one of redemption." Asenath, inspired by the moment, added, "Let us forge a new path that leads not only to Egypt but to the hearts of all nations, sharing the love and the faith that has transformed us. For ours is a testimony that must echo through generations." And thus, a new chapter began. The family known for their strife now bound to carry forward the burden of legacy, carrying the flame of faith to nations far and wide. Little did they know that their union of a Hebrew son and a daughter of Egypt would catalyze a legacy that would extend through centuries, binding peoples with the covenant love of God, drawing hearts to him. As the joyous feast of reunion drew to a close, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. The promise of a nation, birthed from trials and tribulations, swirled like the night around them, and each heart brimmed with the hope of tomorrow. In this primal moment, the sovereign hand of God was at work, moving within their lives to weave a new legacy of faith. Together they rose, making a pledge to honor God in their journey, one lifeline connected to another, destined to become a great nation under heaven's watchful eye, and with newfound purpose, they embraced their calling as a family of faith, tracing their lineage back to the promise made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. For in their unity, they would flourish, a testament to God's unyielding grace, a light set upon a hill that could not be hidden. Now, dear friends, as you have witnessed the climax of this divine narrative, it is your turn to respond. You need to subscribe now to stay connected to God's Word and witness the unfolding of His plans in your own life. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth. Leave a like now, for every click carries the message of hope farther and brighter through the algorithm, and we invite you to comment below how has this incredible story of Joseph and Asenath impacted your faith journey. We want to hear from you and celebrate the work God is doing in your life. Don't wait even one more second to share this powerful testimony. Send this video immediately to at least 5 friends who need to hear of God's truth, and together, let us shine the light of Christ into the world. The harvest is plentiful, and your actions can help reach more souls for Him.